Without a college education, without a high school diploma, keep this in mind, you guys, this is just straight like hard work over the years.
And it kind of sounds like it probably wasn't this way, but it sounds like on the snap of your finger, you were like, I actually think this is going to be better.
I went to look to buy a house. I scrapped money together that I had, and they gave me a contract before I actually had the property.
You leveraged your W-2 skill sets and built a business around it. Like, you took what you were doing for years.
Stock market crashed. That day I took the $40,000 that I had and I put it all in on Moderna, which was probably pretty crazy.
When things go wrong, there is opportunity. When there are changes, do you cower away? Do you sit inside your house and do you wait?
Jesse, officially welcome to the show. Corey and I are stoked to have you here, man. We were chatting a bit off recording. We've been following you for a long time. We know you're an expert in the field and we run in similar circles. So long overdue, but thanks for joining the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's take it back and dial back the clock, maybe pre-real estate, if there is any pre-real estate. We like to kind of showcase, how people got into the game, became entrepreneurs, when the light bulb went off. So, take us as far back as you can think of.
Yeah. So working in healthcare, I worked in healthcare. That's what I did for the longest time. I was one of those kids that didn't graduate high school. And I know it's weird for me to even say, like, I still feel this like weird pit in my stomach saying it, but I got this job in healthcare when I was about 22 years old. About a year after my daughter was born. I was delivering oxygen, you guys. And I thought it was like a cool job. I was like, okay, cool. I got this cool job, pretty decent job. And there was this guy that walked in, Ryan, and he looked like David Spade, like twins, identical, had the same personality. He walked in like pointing guns at people and stuff. And like everybody in the office loved this guy. And I remember seeing him walk in for the first time. He pulled up in the sweet Mercedes, and I went to my boss. I was like, hey, I want to do what that guy does, the David Spade lookalike. And my boss is like, yeah, right. That guy's got a college education. He's the number one sales rep in the entire company. Like, you're not going to be able to do what that guy does. So it's like this gut punch to the stomach. And I kept bugging my boss over time. And I ended up actually getting an assistant job to work with that guy. His name was Matt, the Matt David Spade lookalike guy. So he taught me all these things about sales. And probably about maybe a year and a half later, I actually ended up getting a sales role. I was the first person the company ever hired that didn't have a college education. And guess what I did with that job? I crushed it. The David Spade lookalike, Matt was his name. He gave me all these shitty accounts that were in the Central Valley area, like Newman and like Livingston, all these places that were in the middle of nowhere that nobody even knows about. And I ended up turning those into what were considered A+ accounts. There's A, B, C, just like you would think of real estate. And those turned into A accounts. I ended up being one of the top sales reps in the county along with David Spade lookalike. And fast forward to 2015, left that company, went and worked for other companies, was making six figures without a college education, without a high school diploma. Keep this in mind, you guys. This is just straight like hard work over the years. I was working in a hospital, Doctors Medical Center in Modesto, and I was walking down one of those dimly lit kind of yellow tinted hospital rooms, if you guys can picture this right now. And, you go to a nursing station, they're shaped like a U. And there was this nurse that was there, and she had this incredible accent. She was saying things like, don't you know, and isn't he a doll? And I was just like, I'm in California, and everybody says dude and bro, and man talks just like me. And I was gravitated towards her. I went to her, and I was like, hey, I love your accent. Like, where are you from? Can any of you guys decide? Or can you guys tell where that accent was
I
from?
kind of was a little bit confused by the accent.
Don't you know?
Canada.
Oh, okay. Yes, Canada.
No, it's close.
Wisconsin?
Fargo, North Dakota.
Oh, Dakota. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got a little closer.
Accents, you guys. I was trying to do it. Anyway, I ended up finding out her name was Barbara. She was from Fargo, North Dakota. And I asked her what she was like, what she was doing there. She said she was on assignment for 90 days. So she came from Fargo, expected California to be like palm trees and stuff. And Modesto is basically the armpit of California, which is none of that at all. But she was here for 90 days. She was staying in a shitty motel because there was no housing. In fact, it was a Motel 6, and she was paying almost $3,000 a month. And I thought like Motel 6s were like $50 a night or something like that. But I guess not. She said the taxes and all this stuff ended up being pretty close to $3,000. Keep in mind, my brain didn't think about real estate ever. In fact, I had the worst experience with real estate. My parents growing up as a kid, I saw them. I grew up in a super Catholic household, and my parents were extremely forgiving. So what that means is they had tenants that would not pay rent, And my dad would be like, oh, they got a family, they got kids, like let this month slide. So one of my first experiences with this is I remember, have you guys ever watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation? I'm
Love
sure
it.
you
It's a
guys.
staple, dude.
All right, cool. You know the van that they drive around in, that freaking woody looking thing, the wood panel. So that's the kind of car that my mom used to drop me off in school when I was in elementary, and it was not fun, trust me. But anyway, I remember riding in the back of that car and it had these like kind of wool seats, and I was running my hands over them, looking out the window. My parents were arguing in the front seat. I've never heard my parents really argue ever. And we ended up pulling up to a place. I didn't know where it was at. My parents just said, we walked in the doors. It was like these double doors that opened up, and they said, sit in the back here. It was a courthouse. And my parents were up front, judge in the middle, this woman on the left. And I remember specifically the judge saying, Mr. and Mrs. Vasquez, this woman has done this before. This is continuing what she does. It went 6 months without her paying the rent at all. My parents let it go. Finally decided to get into court. And the woman that my parents had, like, she was a habitual tenant that just didn't pay rent. And I remember like thinking that, like, oh my gosh, I never want to get involved with real estate ever. Like, this is like ridiculous. My parents had that happen to them multiple times, by the way. My parents were super forgiving, understood what it was like to be, live through hardships. And I think that they just had that, they weren't business owners. They didn't think like a business. And I think there's a big separation between, being a good person, which would be considered a good person, like let somebody stay somewhere, but for free. And then like actually running a business. There's a hard line that stops in between both of those. My parents didn't have that. So fast forward to 2015, I did not even think about getting into real estate at all. But that one moment right there with that nurse gave me this like, okay, cool. Here's like, this might actually be something for me. Despite what happened with my parents, my dad always told me that real estate was important and powerful. And he still kept telling me that over the years. Barbara, the woman at the hospital that I met, the nurse, she said, I asked her what agency or like, how do I actually connect with somebody so I can get more travelers like her if I was to buy a house or rent a house. And she said, go down to the HR department in the hospital and see if you could talk to somebody down there about housing. And you guys know, like working in the hospital, or if you've ever seen this before, the nurses have these little badges. You can like badge in. There's a little electronic thing on the door, and it'll let you go in. I went down to the first floor, and in order to get in the HR department, you had to badge in. So I sat there for like 15 minutes waiting for somebody to come into the door. So a nurse came in, she badged in, and if I didn't make this decision right here, we wouldn't even be talking on this podcast. So I want everybody to hear this out because it's something really small, but it was a pivotal moment for me in my entire life. Most people won't go down to a door or open it. And I remember this nurse went in, and this is one of those quiet closed doors where you see it swing open and then it'll like slowly like start to close. Right about 8 inches before it shut, I stuck my foot in the door, like literally shoved my foot in the door, grabbed it by the side, opened it up, and there was this woman sitting right in front. She had these big giant letters on her desk that said Misty, who obviously was her name. And I went up and said, hey, Misty, I just talked to Barbara on third floor telemetry, and she mentioned something about housing. And Misty's like, who the hell are you? Like, what are you doing in here? And I was just like, I'm just a guy. Like, I just talked to her. She talked about housing. I actually want to see if there's a way that I can connect with either you or somebody that actually handles the housing for clinicians. And she told me there was a company named AMN Healthcare, and there was a gentleman named Michael who was the representative that they connected with on a regular basis to have nurses come. So she gave me his name, gave me his information. I reached out to Michael and ended up finding out that they were having issues finding housing. Like, all these clinicians were just having major issues finding properties to stay at. A lot of them were having to stay at hotels that were crappy. And in Modesto, there was nothing really nice except for the DoubleTree, which was like $200. And back then that was quite a bit, $200 a night. So I ended up talking to Michael. We ended up actually getting a contract that was through Doctors Medical Center, which was the hospital, for 2 years. And that's when I went to look to buy a house. I scrapped money together that I had, and they gave me a contract before I actually had the property. So that's when my brain was like, okay, cool. I can now just buy a property, get a nurse to come in here. I have a contract already sitting here waiting to go. They already approved and said, yeah, if you get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, we'll have nurses stay in the rooms. We're going to pay you $4,000 a month to have this place fully furnished and everything in there. You just supply the housing. And that's where my brain was just like, oh my God, this is like, I'm already making almost 3x long-term rental rates. And keep in mind, you guys, like back in 2015, making $1,000 a door was like non-existent. Like, unless you bought a property in the 70s and you paid it off or something like that, it wasn't going to happen. So for me, that was like, this aha moment where my W-2 job was doing exactly what I just did. It's going in, talking to what are called case managers, becoming their friends and having them send me referrals. So I just took that kind of same approach with the real estate part of it, where it's all relationship based. Started to create relationships, landed that contract before I got the door, and yeah, it was that one move right there where Barbara just gave me a little bit of insight, information, and walking down in the HR department and making that all happen. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that one individual selfish kind of move in a way.
Jesse, I'm very curious about the psychology of you leaving a job that you just worked so hard to get, right? Or like get into the sales aspect. You learned all this. You built your way up. You were really, really good at it. And it kind of sounds like it probably wasn't this way, but it sounds like on the snap of your finger, you were like, I actually think this is going to be better and this is what I want to do. So talk to me about the transition and the psychology of being like, I know this is working well, but like this spoke to me like in some sort of like angel like fashion, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you another story real quick. There was this woman named Jen who used to run it was called ABC Boot Camp. And here in Central California, it was this woman, she was my age, probably a few years younger than me. And back in probably 2012, I was doing her boot camp, and she had like these classes that she would meet people at the park. We literally do the outside workout. And I remember counting, this was like she had a 5 a.m. class, a 10 a.m. class, like a 1 o'clock class, a 5 p.m. class, and a 7 p.m. class. We all paid like $200 something. It was the first person that I met that I realized like was an individual person making like 50, 60, $70,000 a month. I never met anybody like that in my life. She never told me that. She never said that's what I'm making, but I did the math. She was her own boss, didn't have any other overhead, anything like that. We were meeting outside. So I realized like I need to work for not somebody like a company. And I built a lot of these companies up. I started working for a lot of startups that were in healthcare, and I made these companies like millions of dollars. And I'm just like, why am I sitting here doing this? So I realized that I was good at one thing, and that was connecting with people. I was able to leave these jobs and bring nurses and therapists and all these people with me. That's a big indicator of leadership. Anytime anybody hires somebody and they're able to bring staff with them, like they're leaders in a way. I didn't really think about that until, fast forward years of my life. But I worked in San Francisco, Los Angeles. So I had to like travel. I was a business manager, sales manager, business sales manager. So I was covering all these markets, and I had to be away from my kids and my family all the time. So I'm like, dude, I don't want to keep driving to San Francisco from Central California. It's like a 2.5 hour drive there, 2.5 or 3 hour drive back, depending on traffic, sometimes even more than that. So I was spending hours of my day in traffic. Yeah, I was making 200 grand, which is pretty freaking amazing to live in Central California. But I was just grinding all the time. And so that transition for me, COVID hit in 2020, like the great resignation, everybody took off, left their W-2 jobs. I was starting to realize like I have the ability to just leave this job. And if I ever need to go back to it, I can. I have the skill set. I've been doing this for 17 years. Of course, somebody else is going to hire me. Like I knew that in the back of my head, but I was scared because I think that was one of the scariest decisions to leave a W-2 job, especially just like you said, Corey, like, I don't have a high school diploma. I didn't have all those traditional things that most people have. And that set me back in a lot of ways because mentally I wasn't like, I didn't think it was enough. And honestly, I thought it was never enough because I didn't have like an accolade, like a diploma. So I decided to take that plunge regardless. And it really did suck because like my family tripped out. My mom called me one day because my daughter, who's 21 now, but at the time she was probably like 16, called my mom and was like, and we're Hispanic. So like anytime like a daughter calls a grandma, abuela, and is like, hey, my dad quit his job. We're going to be homeless. Like, we're not going to have any money. Like, my mom literally calls me. She's like, what the heck are you doing? Why are you leaving your job? Like, my mom knows, like, old school Hispanic people are like, you work your ass off with these companies, you move the ladder up and you stay there and you're comfortable. Like, that's what it is. And so I had that burned into my brain, but also realized talking about that woman that I talked about, Jen, earlier, and just seeing like the potential. For me, I was just like ready to go all in on something that I felt I could try to do. And real quick, this is another backstory. My risk tolerance has always been high. In 2020, earlier 2020, February 2020, I decided to take um, refinance my property that I live in, this property I'm in right now. And I got that money on March 15th. March 17th, COVID hit where like everything shut down. Stock market crashed. That day, I took the $40,000 that I had and I put it all in on Moderna, which was probably pretty crazy. But I knew that there's a lot of dislocation and disruption that happens. And just like we know, the stock market's going to go up over time. In fact, now thinking back, I probably should have put it on like Carnival Cruise or something. I probably would have 1000x my returns. But in my brain, I'm just like that Warren Buffett saying, I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, be fearful when people are greedy or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So I just looked back at history, like what happens, and the stock market just crashed. I put that money in on Moderna. The second that I did that, probably, I don't know, 7 days later, a week later, Moderna was like in the news. Like people were talking about it. I did a lot of research on it. It was Moderna and Pfizer, right? They were like competing for that. So over the course of a year after I left my job, that money just started doubling, tripling, quadrupling. That 40,000 ended up turning to, more than $300,000 over the next, couple years. So I felt like I had this financial cushion because of that risk tolerance that I put in there. So as I left my W-2 job, yes, I did a couple of things that were really crazy, but I knew they were going to come back. So that kind of gave me a little bit of stability as I was going into it. It gave me a little bit of cushion. And I know not everybody's going to have that kind of frame of thought coming in. In fact, that's pretty crazy thinking back on like somebody putting $40,000, like you're rolling the dice. But that's where the framework came in. Like I felt a little bit of stability because of that, because I was able to put cash into it. Keep in mind, like I was saving cash the whole time. So I felt really comfortable coming into it. My properties were cash flowing me already about $6,000 a month from the last, probably 4 years. I had probably 6, 7 properties at that time already that were cash flowing. And I felt comfortable. I was like, okay, cool. I can leave. I'm close to my W-2 income already. And if this doesn't work, I have, this other money to fall back on. So I felt pretty stable at that time, but having that dislocation from just what was going on with COVID, my family being like, dude, you're a freaking idiot. Why would you do that? I was kind of alone out there. I was really on my own. And sometimes that could be really tough to deal with as an individual or an entrepreneur when you don't have the support. But I think that, somewhere in my head, I felt like there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. And, here we are now where things kind of came full circle.
So I first of all, it's awesome, man. I want to highlight a couple of things before we get to the details of your story. I think that I've learned that when a bunch of people are calling you idiots, I think you're doing something right. I think you're on the right path. When the people that are living life and quote unquote normally are saying that, no disrespect whatsoever.
Yeah.
People
Sure.
are in their own comfort zone, and that's, if they want to live that way, that's awesome. But when people are saying that to you, I think you're on the right path. And the COVID was so terrible for so many people. But in that there's opportunity. And for you to find it, I think just speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit of when things go wrong, there is opportunity. When there are changes, do you cower away? Do you sit inside your house and do you wait? Or just as an example, like Ryan and I, and like, not to toot our horn, it's just that when COVID started, we started our podcast. I was like, I'm not going to sit here and wait for something to happen. And that was like April 2020. And I'm so glad that we made that decision. So I think it's so important to not just take, your reality is your reaction to the reality. Your reality is not actually what happens. And I think that to me, it's like, if you live by that, you're going to have great success. And I want to talk about your success now too. Like you have now over 20, this might be even more. This is just from your website, but like over 20 properties between California and Texas. Yep. I want to talk about the strategy of Midterm Rentals. It sounds like you got the contracts already. Then you have to go buy the house. You kind of did it in reverse for the first couple. Talk to me about like what strategy you implemented, what was the price point for some of these homes, and how you went about it, building that up. And then I'll let Rye chime in at some point here too.
Yeah, got you. Okay, cool. I started to look at, maybe this is something I probably should have talked to my therapist about, but now that I'm thinking about it, like my parents, remember how I told you they didn't want to have, people didn't pay rent to them. I wanted to get contracts that paid. So subconsciously, now that I'm talking about this out loud, I'm kind of seeing that there was this reflection there where these companies were actually the leasees. It wasn't the individual people. So I knew that, in order for me to continue to scale, I needed to bring in more contracts to connect with more people. So I started to look at multiple different properties. The first year that I had my first property, it cash flowed quite a bit. I saved all that money. I didn't use it. I used that money to deploy it again, to reinvest it into the secondary property in 2016. So in 2016, I was on Airbnb. I had my second property on there, and there was a booking that came through for like $7,000. Somebody just booked the entire like 3 months at $7K, which is, with fluctuating prices and stuff like that, you could see these crazy prices go through. It ended up being an insurance company. So I realized like, holy crap, I can have a a nursing company, an insurance company will pay ridiculous amounts of money to have families stay at a property because their home has been lost due to a fire or flood or something like that. So I started to realize like I don't want to necessarily go after individuals. I want to go after these companies that are going to pay. So that was my mindset. The same thing with we did with Barbara, the same thing we did with ALE Solutions, which is the insurance company, the temporary housing insurance. I started just AMN Healthcare was a nursing company that I connected with. We got the contract through them. So I just started looking at, okay, cool. If I can get properties and I can get these agencies or these companies to be the lessees, and we do short, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or even longer than that term, I'm able to build a pretty solid Rolodex. These properties started to cash flow me $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month from one door. And that's where my brain was like, holy crap, like I don't need to have a bunch of properties. I just need to have three or four that are cash flowing, 2 to 4K. And I'm getting close to like, 10 grand a month. And I think that's where my brain started to realize that the people that I knew back then, Corey and Ryan, they were long-term renting. They were making 300 or 400 bucks a month from those properties. So you need to have like 30 doors to make 4 grand from that. Like I was doing that with one door. So I started to realize like, how do I continue to multiply this? How do I continue to connect with more people? Again, going back to my W-2 job, my whole entire job was to connect with people, have them like, know, and trust me, and then send me referrals. So exactly the framework that I did with my W-2 job, I started talking to these companies, ALE Solutions. You guys remember Skype? Remember that before Zoom? I would literally get on a Skype call with these people from all these different areas. We would order them food. So we'd have food delivered to them, and I would have a meeting just like I am with you guys right now. And I talk about the services that we have in the Central Valley or whatever market we were in. They'd get food. So I'd basically do an in-service with them over the phone. That's when I started to realize like, okay, cool. I can actually build a career by doing the exact same thing I did for 17, 18 years. I'm already operating the same way. Now we're just talking about something completely different. So instead of the referral, it's now a contract. That's the only difference between the two. So I started to get all these multiple different contracts. I started listing on Airbnb, using short-term rentals and midterm rentals, and then everything just kind of exploded. So I was typically looking at 2x, 3x, or 4x long-term rental rates. And all these different types of clients had different types of revenue that would come through. Travel nurses at the time in 2015 to 2020, like you can make 2x long-term rental rates with folks coming in, and then a COVID hit. Now you can like 3x, 4x. So we had that limited window right there. But I started to see that there's a lot of opportunities in not just healthcare and not just insurance. We're talking about corporate housing, folks that are on assignment from some type of business that are coming to work in a certain area, construction workers that are working on certain projects and markets. So I started to see all these different types of clients, and that's where my brain went. How do I connect, and how do I actually create a book of business that I can rely on, and not necessarily focus on Airbnb to solve those problems. I'm actually creating a book of business that I own, that I don't need to go on Airbnb to get. And I can't tell you guys how valuable that piece is, because I'm not just listing on a platform waiting to get booked. Like I'm actually creating the Rolodex. I'm building my own house on my own land. And that's something that I believe is like, that's what actual business ownership is. And not to knock short-term rentals, I just don't feel like that's a true business, because you're listing on somebody else's platform. They're marketing for you. Anybody that has a short-term rental, I've had short-term rentals where people have literally thrown parties in my house, Corey, and Airbnb shut down my listing until they did an investigation. Like, how does that even happen? Because somebody threw a party and I called. Anyway, I just realized like, I don't actually have ownership of my business that way. And short-term rentals are great, but again, I just don't think that Airbnb or, it's just, I don't feel like it's an actual true business unless you create a property management or a co-hosting business. Yeah. But just listing on those platforms, you're just an employee of Brian Chesky. You know what I mean?
100%. We've had we've been at the mercy of Airbnb, and if you get one bad review, you get pushed to the third, fourth, fifth, whatever, 10th page. It's all algorithm based, and it's kind of a hesitation we have when we coach our students and clients, really, like on their first property. It's like, hey, you can try an Airbnb and we can go that route, but we recommend starting with the tried and true long-term rental, get a feel for it, get your feet wet, training wheels, and then we'll scale up there, just because risk tolerances change at that point. Once you've gone through the process, you kind of understand, can weave around a bit more, but you're really the front desk person of a hotel as managing an Airbnb, right? And there's a lot of things that can go wrong, just more variables. So there's a lot that I want to cover here, but I'm going to touch on a couple highlights. One thing is, like you mentioned, your a whole career. And what I really like that you did is you leveraged your W-2 skill sets and built a business around it. Like you took what you were doing for years and you said, hey, listen, I can do the same exact thing, but within real estate, higher profit margins, can run your own schedule. It's beautiful, man. We're doing a very similar thing. I've worked in sales and customer service my entire life. Corey's very similar on the sales side. And we just have woven that in to all of our businesses. And now, there's sales and marketing and customer service heavy, right? But we built them around real estate. And the thing that works is real estate is a relationship business. It's all about who you know, who can get you from A to Z, but then also like you're only as good as your team. And we talk about this for long distance investing. Even if some of our properties are only an hour away, we're not going to these properties all the time. Maybe once a year, right? So it's how you construct a team around you to run and operate the show, relationship based. But another thing I wanted to touch on is you're an amazing storyteller, dude. And I think every time we've gone into a topic, it's only been a short half hour so far, but you have an anecdote or a story to share about that. And I think that's another thing. We talk about branding and kind of putting yourself and your dreams and aspirations into the universe, but to be able to tell your own story and to be your own sounding board, that is a skill set that not a lot of people have and they're not great at. And that's what I think is actually what has separated you from the pack and has allowed you to meet all these amazing people. We already talked about a lot of people that we run in similar circles with. And I was just looking at a list of people on your podcast, and they're all the heavy hitters of the industry. And they're awesome people, by the way. We've chatted with the majority of them too, but we're dropping you in the bucket there too, right? It's just another person. And so you guys all have this amazing innate ability to come off as a genuine person, but then also showcase the learnings, the trials, tribulations, and the stuff you've been through to get you to where you want to be. And one of the things specifically that I remembered from the beginning of the episode is, you had like a gulp moment, or like you hesitated when you told us you were in a high school grad. It's like, dude, that's a badge you should wear proudly. And I think it's truly, dude, like it separates it. My dad never went to college. And like, that's one of the things he's like, it's always part of his story. And I love that because, the deck in society's mind is stacked against you, right? You have all these people clawing and pulling you to go in this direction. And you're like, dude, I know this is for me. Like, I'm not supposed to be the college guy. I'm not supposed to be the high school guy. Some people realize it way earlier than most. So it's just important. I want to say this to people that are listening. Like, you don't have to go to college to succeed. If you feel like you're meant for something else, follow that path. You have a long trajectory in your life. You can fail over and over and over and over and over. You can always go back to college, dude. And I know it's not high school, but like you can get your GED and then go up from there. And so there's a lot of people you met, you talked about dumping 45,000 into Moderna, right? Like that was a big risk, dude, but you were young enough where you're like, dude, I got 20, 30 years to figure this shit out if it doesn't work. So there's so many just little tweaks in your story and things that I resonate with fully, because Corey and I have taken these leaps in our late 20s and early 30s. And sometimes it feels like if you take this, if it's the wrong move, your life's over. And you're like, oh my God, I got to start over. Who cares? If it was all wiped out now, we're in our early 30s, approaching mid, it feels like you're in the mid pack of your life. And if something like the financial foundation falls out from under you, you're toast. And it's not true. And I think it's something that we build up in our heads. All the skill sets and the relationships that we've built over the last, call it 5 years in real estate, whatever, we could go to anyone, get a job right away, immediate, and say like, dude, they know what we're good at. They know the value we can bring to them. And then it's providing our network and more people. And so basically passing the torch, bringing it back to relationship businesses, all these things that like what makes a true real estate investor tick is the ability to take action. And what I loved back to your beginning of your stories, one last thing I want to touch on, it stuck out to me. You stuck your foot in that door, man. There are so many doors of opportunity that open for people and they just let the door close. And you stuck your foot right in the door, whipped that thing open, and you said, hey, I'm interested in real estate. What do I got to do? People don't do that, dude. They'll sit on YouTube for hours, they'll listen to podcasts, and then whether it's fear, life getting in the way, whatever it is, they just stop and they're like, maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's for someone else. I'll fall back into the comfort. And I think for all of us in this room, we found a way to break out of that comfort because it's very hard. And I don't know when it's going to happen for most people, but if you're listening to this episode, my point in bringing this up is all three of us have separately done this and we've all found a great level of success in real estate and in building businesses. So take it from us. You need to realize opportunities, obviously be prepared for those opportunities, but you have to take a leap of faith at some point. 85% of the way there, just build the parachute on the way down. Corey mentions that all the time. So I wanted to give some highlights from what you said, because you are a great storyteller and you went into a lot of things, but those have stuck out to me. I think they're going to really help people as they go through their journey. But a selfish question for me to kind of carry this conversation to the next level is like, you've talked about a bunch of different deals and you are amazing in the short term. Midterm rental space is specifically where you found your niche. Corey and I actually just purchased, or we're about to close on, a 10 unit up in Vermont. We're converting it all from long term to midterms. Super stoked about it. So thank you. Yeah, we're stoked on it. And so the question I have for you, and to make it kind of sexy for listeners, is like, based out of your 20 properties, what is the best deal that you've ever done? Where you found it, what you purchased it for? I just want to go into a specific deal analysis almost, and just talk about the cash flow it provides you and how it's elevated you and allowed you to play real life Monopoly and move to the next one.
Yeah, this is awesome right here. This story right here is gonna come full circle. So hang with me for a minute. So, all right. So 2022, there was a property in Lodi, California. It's basically little wine country, for those of you that are in California. So what I mean by little wine country is Napa. Everybody knows Napa, right? Lodi, California is right next to Stockton, which is ghetto as hell. But Lodi has a ton of vineyards and stuff. So it's becoming what's called, I'm doing air quotes right now, Little Napa. There was a property there that was for sale. It's freaking dope ass property. It was one of those vintage kind of 1930s homes. It was completely redone. It was sitting on the market for 90 days. At that time, I wanted to build my co-hosting business. So I was calling every listing that was 90 days, on the market where people couldn't sell it. I was running numbers for that property, like what would it actually earn as a short midterm rental. So I call this agent and I'm like, hey, this is a dope house you guys have. I'm not sure why it's not able to sell, but if you want to let the owners know, I actually created a pro forma that shows how much this property could make as a short-term rental or a midterm rental. If they decide that they want to, I'm willing to co-host this property so that you as an agent can list this back in maybe 6 months or a year after it becomes a cash flowing property. And now you can actually not sell this to a family, but you can sell this to an investor with cash flow coming through. It took a couple weeks. I bothered her a couple times, and finally I got a call from her and she's like, hey, I'm sitting with the owners right now. Do you have that pro forma with me? I was on my phone, dude. I was not at home. And she just called me randomly. And I was sitting here going through Mashvisor, trying to find all this stuff to go through. And I ended up talking to them. She was they lived in Livermore, California, which is probably about an hour and a half from Lodi. She owned a design company business, like an interior designing company. And they ended up moving because they bought their dream house in Lodi. And started to realize, like, this place is cool. It's my dream house, but it's so far from my job. Just like I mentioned earlier, traffic. So we ended up doing exactly what I said. We listed the property. It ended up killing. It ended up doing really well. The mortgage on that place is $3,800 a month. And there we were cash flowing about $3,000. It was renting for $7K a month. And we even did $10K as a short-term rental a couple times during the month. Lodi, again, like I mentioned before, people were coming in and out. 3 months after hosting it, they decided, like, you know what? We need to get rid of this house. We want to buy a house in Lodi. These folks were in their mid 40s and they just didn't want to live they were living with their mom. Like, they were like literally like bought this dream house and they moved back into Lodi with their family. They've listed it on the market again. And I was like, hey, what if I just took the payments from you guys? Like, what if I actually have you guys heard of creative financing? And they're like, we've never heard of it before, but we need $60,000. Like, that's actually, they started with $100,000. Like, we need $100,000 to go buy another property. And I was like, running the numbers and stuff like that. So that woman, she is an interior designer, decorator, all that stuff. Like I mentioned before, completely decorated that house, spent $40,000 on the furniture, making it like one of the coolest properties on the planet. I went back to them. I said, I can't give you guys 100, but I can give you 60. And they sat there for a little bit and she's like, yeah, we just need to be able to buy another house. And I think 60 will, like, that would work. That's what we're going to do. So I ended up getting this creative finance deal. The property was worth, at that time, about $700,000. It's worth about $950 now. And she furnished the place with $40,000 of her own money, showed me the receipts and everything. I ended up picking up that place. I had to put $60,000 down, but again, keep in mind, I'm getting $40,000 in furniture. So in my brain, I picked this up for 20, after the furniture and all that stuff. So long story short is, one business mode, which is co-hosting, which was me finding expired listings where I was going to people saying, hey, we can list this. That's where the opportunity is. Like, I wasn't trying to take a property from somebody. I was actually trying to serve that family. That's what I want people to take away from here. How can we get this property to sell? Can we create this as a co-hosting property where you can actually start to get money that comes through that you could turn around and sell it later? And I started to realize, like, by me creating a value to these people, because again, they were going to lose the house. They were paying the mortgage every month. here's another option. Most people don't know that. They don't know they have that option. And for me, I started to be able to pick up properties that way, where we would co-host them for a while. They would end up wanting to sell them. Was able to create a finance deal on those, or find somebody that could buy it as a cash flowing asset. So now I'm like, dude, I have like, this is amazing. This is like one of the best deals that I ever had. That property today, we're still renting it for 7,000. In fact, it was rented for a year at $7,500, cash flowing over 3K a month from one door. And man, it's cool to kind of watch and go full circle that you can have a idea of, I just want to co-host somebody's property, to all of a sudden now turning it into a creative finance deal. 6 months later, after you did what you said you were going to do, the family decided to sell, and here I am, being able to pick up that property. I had 0% interest. They didn't care about interest. They didn't even ask about interest. So 0% interest. I just took over the payments, gave them 60K, and here we are now with that property in Lodi. So,
dude, this is unbelievable. The power of the midterm rental, man. It's truly amazing. That's an amazing story. I want to touch on a couple things and how in our own lives, how this has affected us. So it's because of COVID and because of the world being flat. I've said this on a bunch of episodes, meaning you can travel anywhere, you can work from anywhere. Like, they're valuing, and I'm seeing even like high level business owners are saying, I would rather rent, because I want to be able to go somewhere on the snap of a dime, and I want to be able to live my life in a new area, and I can work from anywhere. And I think the power of this is amazing. I have two quick stories for you. I have a short-term rental that I've used in Tampa, Florida. It was getting great, $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 months, right? But I'd have to pay cleaning and all this stuff. I was making good money on it, and I never realized. Keep in mind, my mortgage is $4,400 on this property. I never realized that somebody for 90 days would rent this out for $8,500 a month.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay. Like, I don't have to pay cleaning. I can scale back on the pool service. I can scale back some things, and somebody is going to be traveling down here. I don't even know, actually. My property manager's handling it. I don't know if they're down there my guess is they're snowbirds, because it's January, February, March in Tampa. But, they're paying $8,500 a month because it's this condensed time frame. Another quick story is that the 10 unit that Ryan was just mentioning, this is amazing in 2025 to be able to do this. Like, shout out to our partner, Sean, in New Hampshire. We have a property under contract. By the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be closed, but it's a 10 unit, a 6 unit on one side of the road, a 4 unit on the other side of the road, that somebody has completely renovated, quartz countertops, the entire thing. It's beautiful. So we're able to purchase a turnkey asset in 2025 that, by the conversion of long-term to midterm rentals, it's going to cash flow day one. And our analysis is only converting 6 of the 10 units to midterm rentals, because it's in Vermont, about 15 to 20 minutes from Dartmouth College and Dartmouth Health. So there's stipends that are coming from this for a 2-bedroom from Dartmouth Health is like $3,000. So I don't want to get into too much detail on it, because we have a full podcast on it. My point is, a turnkey property that you're thinking in 2025, how the hell are you buying a turnkey property with interest rates being this high? The midterm rental strategy is taking our $2,100 rents and turning them into $3,000, and you multiply that by 6, boom, there's cash flow all over the place. So this is, it's not necessarily a new strategy, but the implementation of how you're doing it is new. And I think it's fascinating, man. And I think about my own life and wanting to travel to different areas for 3 months with my girlfriend before we have kids. And like, you're willing to pay a premium to do that. We can work remote. The amount of people, it's not just traveling nurses, but the amount of people that are starting online businesses that can do this, it's only going to go up. And I think that you've kind of hit the nail on the head about a business model that it just makes sense. It just works.
Yeah. And, we're starting to see this rise of what I consider a modern investor, like where people are coming into real estate. Traditionally, they would have bought long-term rentals or looking at, avenues to do that. And now you have people that are coming in looking at, co-living. That's what I consider a modern investor. Residential care facilities. I came from healthcare. That's another mode where people are making cash. It's a cash business. Then you have midterm rentals where you're actually creating a business off the tangible real estate. And what I love about this is that you're seeing these modern investors who are actual entrepreneurs that are coming in and looking at this. Before, I don't mean to knock that, saying that real estate investors aren't entrepreneurs, but they weren't actually looking at it like a business. They weren't actually focusing on it. They're just like, hey, I'm going to get a property manager. We're going to pass it over to them. And whatever comes through, I'm just going to get mailbox money. But now you have these people that are coming in with that modern investor entrepreneur mindset. They're like, okay, I can residential care. I can actually create a business out of this. We can go with co-living. We can create a business out of this. and we can do sober living facilities. That's another actual business, right? So you're starting to see this different kind of mold with investors coming in now. I think it's freaking awesome because rates are different. We have these different people that think in a different way. That's what we're kind of moving along to. And I love to be a part of that. I love that we're, a push on that end. And I love to be propelling that idea and that mode of business. I think this is what's going to be the future of real estate. In fact, what you guys are doing right now with the multifamily, I mean, you guys can create a completely different type of cash flow. You can have a totally different type of net operating income. You might have bought that for $1 million, but you get a couple contracts in there and you show proof of concept. Now that building because of the cash flow is now worth 2 million because of the dollar amount that's coming through. So, I mean, this is where you're going to start seeing these investors come through, just like what you guys are doing right now, creating a totally different type of environment, actually creating a business around that 10-unit building, and you're going to flip the net operating income. And all of a sudden now your cap rates are completely different. You have a different type of asset. That's super smart. And I hope you guys are like thinking about that. It sounds like you guys are already. And you start to think about this more of the contract base where you get that steady income coming through rather than just random people booking. But that's where the magic starts to happen, where you start to actually create and then eventually sell this to another investor where they're going to cash flow already from day one. You've just turned an asset from, whatever the income was to now what it is now. And of course, an investor is going to buy that because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, man, this is amazing. I'm on your website here. I'm looking at, you have a midterm rental summit. So people want to learn about this. Is that Cody Sanchez next to you in this photo? That looks a lot like her. Okay. I didn't know she was involved in the real estate side of things. So, I mean,
She's not.
Okay. So
she hates real estate, by the way.
Well, I've listened to some podcast episodes of her saying that real estate's great for preservation, right? Not for building wealth.
Right.
Maybe while we're on this, what's the story of you knowing her? How does she play into your story?
Yeah, she came to the summit last year and talked. So everything that I'm talking about right now is about, she's all about Main Street, bringing back Main Street. And what do you think owning property is for people? It's like if you're creating a business, you're actually being an entrepreneur. We're actually creating a book of business. And that's exactly what it is. She came and she talked about at the summit last year. She talked about, building a business on top of your tangible real estate. She doesn't like real estate at all. In fact, I had a talk with her after on stage where she's like, I don't like real estate. She flat out just said that. And I have a YouTube channel where I talk specifically with her. You guys can go watch it. It's pretty good because she just talks about how it's great for exactly what you said, preservation, but it doesn't build money. And I had an argument with her where I'm like, I could start a business today with real estate and still make 100K in the next, 3 months. And here's how I do it. So I think, again, going back to the business and the real estate stuff, that's what we're seeing right now is like the Cody Sanchez type people that follow her are all about buying businesses. Well, we can actually create our own business. I could buy real estate and create this other business where I can actually sell my real estate and sell this business that I've created, which is referral based. People know, like, and trust me on this, but that's my business. I could sell that too. And I think, again, that's where people don't realize, like, I can actually create a substantial amount of income by using a business attached to my actual tangible real estate. You can sell both. Like, it doesn't need to just be one. You know what I mean? In fact, if it's residential property, you can't sell it for what it's worth unless it's a commercial unit like you guys, right? But if I have 20 properties and Blackstone wants to buy, my portfolio, guess what? I can sell my portfolio and my book of business to Blackstone. And guess what Blackstone's doing? They actually just bought Extended Stay America not that long ago. And guess what they're doing? They're getting involved in midterm rentals too, because during COVID, they saw that there was opportunity right there. So they picked up, these extended stay models with 30-day only, 30-day plus. So you're starting to see like these, when you start to see Wall Street make moves like that, institutional capital make moves like that, the general public's going to catch on that in 4 to 5 years. Like, that's coming. That time is coming. So I think right now we're really starting to see this flow of, more people getting involved in the midterm rental space. They're seeing the opportunity, less turnover, less headaches, more of an actual business that you own. But again, most people, 99% of them, just list on Airbnb and don't actually think about it like a business. And the one thing, Corey, you asked me this at the beginning, what do you want somebody to know? What do you want them to walk away with learning today? My goal is to have people think about business in a different way and real estate in a different way, where they're actually able to do both and not just have it be one. And maybe start to think about things in a creative way where you can have companies in your backyard. Dave & Buster's. I don't know if you guys ever heard this story where I talked about this. There was a Dave & Buster's that was being built in Modesto, California. Work trucks parked out front from Louisiana. I drove by, took a picture like a creeper, called the company the next day and said, hey, I saw a couple work trucks in front of Dave & Buster's. Can you tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing here? I actually own multiple different properties. We corporate house people. The woman on the phone ended up telling me after a little bit that she had 5 engineers that were staying there, again, from out of state. They were staying in a Holiday Inn Express, paying $200 a night, basically. That's, if you do 200 times 5, it's $1,000 a day times 30 G's. They got discounts right on 25. I was like, hey, I have a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house. Your 2 least favorite guys are not going to have their own bathrooms, but literally it's a 5-minute drive to work. There's covered parking, there's garage parking, the trucks will fit in there. We'd rent this to you guys for 10K. How does saving 20,000 for the next, month sound to you guys? She's like, let me get back to you. I want to make sure these guys are okay with it. Called me back about 20 minutes later and said, yep, we could do it. We'll have the guys move in, send the lease over. They want to check out the house first. That's what being creative actually is. It's driving by and seeing an opportunity and being able to call and just be like, hey, how can I actually serve? How can I save you guys money? So I think, again, it's about being creative, thinking ahead. And most people have these companies that are in their backyards that aren't even paying attention to it. So now after this conversation, hopefully you're able to see those things in a different light, because there's opportunities literally everywhere. Most of you have those in your backyard, and it's up to you to take advantage of them.
Without a doubt, man. We have limited time remaining here, but I want to ask a couple more things. Talk to us about the summit, the Midterm Rental Summit. That's this. You're probably listening to this episode in early March, and looks like the summit is in April. Just talk to us a little about what goes on there.
Yeah. So basically, Midterm Rentals is a huge network of people that are connecting. What I mean by that is, Corey or Ryan, Corey, you guys can have referrals right now in California, and you guys can call me and say, hey, Jess, I got a referral in Modesto. I just got it from whatever company. We send each other referrals. So unlike the short-term rental industry where everybody's like, pick me, my place is better. I got more cactus in my house than you do. I got more cold plunges and pickleball courts than you do. Midterm rental space, people just want a nice, comfortable place, and we send referrals to each other. So for me, this is a place to go network, connect with other people in the market, be able to network with each other. Plus, you're going to learn how to find the right markets. You're going to learn how to run numbers. We have Dan Martell that's actually showing up. He's going to be headlining this event. Dan Martell's about buying back your time. We're going to talk about creating systems and having operations that are attached to this. So essentially, this is like a building network where you're able to build your network, connect with people, find the right folks that you're going to connect with, and ultimately learn how to actually do the things that you're uniquely qualified to do so you can delegate everything else. And that's what is hard about business ownership sometimes, is doing those things. So we've been able to create these systems and stuff that have been helpful. There's not really anything out right now for midterm rentals, which hopefully this does come out soon, where there's software that actually handles everything. Right now, we're kind of having to do a lot of different things, but we have automated a lot. We're going to talk about that stuff at the summit. So yeah, if anybody's interested in learning about this, you want to be around like-minded people, it's definitely the place to be in San Diego, April 27th to 29th. And you can head over to midtermrentalsummit.com to see what's going on over there.
Beautiful, man. 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes. What gets you out of bed every morning? I'm very curious about your why. We like to ask this question when we can to people. Ryan mentioned you're a really good storyteller, and we don't always get to the question, but from you, I'm very curious to hear it. You came from, sounds like a background where you should have played it safe, Jesse. You shouldn't have done all this. You don't belong in this game, and you're living proof that that's just completely not true. So what is your why?
Yeah, I think that I was put here on this earth, and I knew this really early on, young in my life, that I was here to do something. I was always the kid that was skateboarding all the time. I loved doing tricks and working with people. I was the guy who was also cheerleading people, like, you could do that stair set, you could do these things. So like trying and failing is something I'm super used to because of skateboarding, which sounds kind of weird to think about, but it's like one of those sports that you do the same thing over and over and over and over until you like land it. And then obviously after you land it, it's like, okay, now I do it off a step. Then you do it off 2 stairs, and you do it off 3 stairs, and you continue to move on. So I realized in the now, and Ryan, you were talking about, I was in my early 30s when I actually was in my late 30s, dude. I'm 42 right now. So I was 38 when I left my W-2 job, which isn't a spring chicken. And I used to think 38 was like, in my 20s, 38, you're done. Like, that's over. Like, that's it. When you're 38, like, you're done, dude. Dude, I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm in my 40s right now. I feel like I'm just getting to go. But what gets me going is watching people that listen to podcasts like this send me a note later and just be like, Jess, I listened to a podcast on, Wealth Juice, and I got inspired. I got my midterm rental. I'm cash flowing 5K now. It was, people like you that were able to inspire me. Or somebody that's like, I don't have a high school diploma. I didn't go the traditional route. I've been trying to build something on my own. I ended up renting or arbitraging a property. So for me, I just love that, the ability to be able to help people. I'm talking to the version of myself that didn't believe in myself. And you guys heard that, right? You picked that up. I still to this day feel I should have got a high school diploma. Do I actually need it now? I get to make, I make millions of dollars now. Do I actually need that? I'll never go back and get it. I was never good at school. It wasn't my freaking thing, but I've been able to find a mode where I'm good at these things. I'm able to help other people. And I'm able to go on shows like this and talk about this where people can start to learn about it. And you don't need a degree. You don't need to have these special things. You can go watch a YouTube video or YouTube videos and learn how to do this literally yourself without paying for a course or anything like that. And I think that's a pretty cool place to be. So that's where I'm pretty pumped up about doing this. It's not about me.
I really like this, dude. Yeah. So just touching back on the high school thing, I said wear it as a badge of honor. If you look at any of the maybe top performing athletes or people that reach the pinnacle, they always have some sort of chip on their shoulder, and they can't kick it. I go back to Tom Brady all the time. Dude literally could not get off the path for finding his greatness. He already had won 6 Super Bowls, was trying to get his 7th, right? The whole family thing went down. And like at some point, and I'm not saying, there's a battle between family and your destiny and like becoming the best version of yourself. And there's so many things that you have to balance on the way up. Right. And so I say this to say, wear that proudly, dude. You look at all these athletes, and I think all the guys in the NBA or we can even say in the NFL, they'll make their millions of dollars, and then just to check the box and make mom proud, they'll go back and get the degree, dude. So like, who knows? You might be 50 and you might be like, okay, it's time just to get it, or just never do it, and it's part of your story. And that's what I say is like, I think it's inspiring for people that there's a lot of listeners that may be in a similar boat, and they're like, man, I just don't think that I can do this, and the deck is stacked against me, and you are living proof that you can do it. And that's why we do this. So Corey and I, it's so interesting. You kind of mentioned this, and our stories are similar in a lot of ways, but like, this is the way we can serve the most amount of people. And it's as simple as hopping on a podcast and having a quick conversation for an hour. But how inspiring and motivating is this for someone in the little corner of the world listening to this? That's like, damn, these guys can do it. I can do it. And then you can have one person take action steps and actually change their life, and you get the DM or you get the email or something like that to say, hey man, just want to let you know, you guys inspired me. You changed my life. There's no amount of money can equal that. There's nothing better than that. And like, I really think that's what makes the world go around. And so it's hard. People ask us like, oh, you guys, you continue to do the podcast over and over. And like, you reach this level of success. Like, do you think you'll ever stop? And it's one of those things where it's not, I often get questioned, how much do you make off the podcast too? And it's like, it's not the money. Like it's a podcast. Right. Like, what do you really making off a podcast? Truly. Right. And this, I can say that too, because it's funny, but what we make is the relationship capital. And to get those little notes and things, like, it's just the fuel that you need to keep going, is my point. It's like that's the little gasoline that fuels us back up to say, dude, we're on the right path. Let's just keep going, keep buying the real estate, keep inspiring people, keep posting every single day, keep doing the hard stuff, even when we don't want to. And that's what fuels, I think, all of us as content creators and podcasters, real estate investors. We're all in the same breath here. So I just want to say, dude, thank you for coming on the show. You're super inspiring. I feel like I'm talking to a friend in the, like, I love just like-minded people. We're doing the same stuff, dude. It feels like a little mastermind. We just cracked heads for an hour. So we value your time. Thank you very much. And for those people that are listening to the show, like, these dudes are badass. I love Jesse's story. I want to go listen to his podcast. I want to network, kind of move to the next stage with him. So how can people, get involved in your network with you, potentially get in touch?
Yeah, head over to Instagram. You can find me at The Real Jesse Vasquez. There's too many other Hispanic Jesse Vasquez, so I had to be the real one. Or you can go over to my webpage. It's at therealjessevasquez.com too. I got a YouTube channel. Just type in Jesse Vasquez. I should pop up there. And real quick, right before we get off this, I appreciate you guys so much. You guys continue to do this. I think it's inspiring to watch people continue to build, tell your stories, and listen to other people. But I got goosebumps, man, when you were talking about getting DMs and stuff like that. It's so cool to watch people. We're no different than everybody else. We're like exactly the same. And as soon as you get in these circles, you start to realize that. In fact, I might be a little bit dumber than most people out there, but I'm willing to take action. And that's what separates people. Doesn't matter how smart you are, as long as you're just doing the damn thing. And I think that's what's important. But appreciate you guys, man.
Beautiful. Absolutely.